And we are live. Happy Monday, everybody. Happy almost end of May, start of June. Crazy that we're almost there. Welcome back to another episode of Mindset Monday, the live show where we help you improve your mindset, grow your business, and just have a great week. I'm your host, Hayden Humphrey, uplifter and mindset coach. And I am incredibly excited about my guest today. We go back quite a while, actually. It's been really cool to have been connected through so many iterations of your business, your life, my business, my life. And I'm super excited for the conversation today with my dear friend, super talented speaker and coach, Mr. Aditya Guthey. Mr. Aditya, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Hayden. It's a pleasure to be on your show.
Thank you so much. For the people who haven't had the opportunity to meet you, connect with you, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Sure. So I have about 15 years of background in engineering. Started off as a software engineer, grew into leadership roles like team lead roles and managerial roles. At some point, I felt like I want to do more, but I didn't know how. I felt stuck, worked with a coach, got a lot out of it. For the past 6 years, I decided I want to become a coach. I want to do the same thing that my coach did to me, which is to transform people's lives. And that's what I've been doing for the past 6 years. I'm a speaker, trainer, and coach specifically for tech professionals and tech leaders. For the past 6 years, I've worked with over 250 tech leaders, helping them around communication and leadership skills.
That's awesome. Cool. Well, I'm super excited to have you here. Super excited for our conversation today. And I will ask you the question that I love to kick off this show with, which is, Aditya, what is a mindset shift that you've created recently, and what impact has it had on your business?
Great question. Mindset shift. When I think about mindset shift, I think being in a corporate for about 10 to 15 years, I have an employee mindset, wanting to be provided a career path to move forward. Someone needs to invest in me. That was the mindset that is keeping me play a small game in my own business. So the mindset shift is more entrepreneurial mindset, which means I want to be able to invest. And it's literally looking at, if it's a $10,000 investment, instead of being scared about it, looking at it as, what can I make from this $10,000 investment? Make it even, and what's the return on investment, right? So that allowed me to invest in myself, in my own business, because just like anything else, businesses need nurturing. And especially if you are in a business of training and coaching and speaking, others are not investing in you. You have to invest in yourself. And so that would be the biggest mindset shift.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely appreciate that conversation, changing from an employee mindset to an entrepreneur mindset. Because it's a totally different game. It's a totally different game, totally different rules. And the opportunities are different as well. And at least I found for myself in the beginning, in the first couple of years, I think I was a little bit overwhelmed by that idea, like a little bit overwhelmed by the idea that it was all up to me. And that I could create essentially whatever I, wanted to. And as time has gone on, I've really come to more deeply appreciate the challenge of it and the opportunity of it. Because now it's not so much about like, how do I fit inside of this box? Like, how do I do what others are asking me to do, but rather like, what's the box that I want to design? Like, how do I want it to look? And that's really been, I think so much of what's been so cool in my own journey in terms of being self-employed and being an entrepreneur is getting to make up the rules and basically look at like, how do I want things to feel? How do I want my business to feel? What kind of work do I want to be doing? How much work do I want to take on? What's the pace of work that I want to take on? Understanding ultimately that it's going to be up to me to actually go out and make it happen and create it. But I think the rewards are far greater in a sense.
100%. That brings to your brand, right? Unscripted, which is you don't have to follow somebody else's script. You write your own script. So it's up to us to invest in ourselves, invest in our own business, and not expecting some company to provide that cushion. So it comes with a lot of freedom. It also comes with a lot of belief and investment in your own self.
Totally. I'd be curious for you, in terms of, I love the word that you just used, like belief in self. I guess, how do you actively practice that or work on that for yourself when it comes to building your business and getting more of what you want?
Great question. It's something I continue to work on. And it has two different approaches, right? Number one, self-belief is also self-affirmations, saying to yourself that you can do this, and looking at your strengths and weaknesses and identifying areas or opportunities that are more in line with your strengths. So that's more internal, right? So that's one perspective, one way you can, I tend to build my beliefs and strengths. And for example, one of my strengths is communication, human connection, being able to see what others might not see in other persons, right? Reading the room. Those are some of the strengths I heavily rely on. At the same time, my weaknesses are, I'm not super smart like most other people. My brain tends to take more time, but I rely on my strengths and see what fits into things that I feel passionate about. The second aspect of it is, just by looking at your strengths and weaknesses, you might not have the self-belief. It also needs to be followed up by action, right? So that's the second piece of it. You take small actions. In the beginning of my coaching practice, I would coach anyone who's on the street if they want to be coached, right? I'm taking anyone. Similarly with speaking, right? I would speak anywhere on any topic where I have a stage. But through that, you build confidence. Through that, you see the impact you're making. You get the feedback, you get the testimonials. And over time, you charge fees. And now, at some point of time, you charge enough that you can make a living out of it.
That's great. I appreciate that. I love the breakdown of those two different ones. And I definitely agree with you, on that first piece and talking about the sort of the more internal mindset conversation around how are you relating to yourself? How are you relating to your own efficacy, your own intelligence, your own capability, how you relate to yourself in the face of failure? So much of this is this underlying self-narrative. What do you believe to be true about yourself? What do you believe is your inherent worth as a person? I find very often that we relate to ourselves in not necessarily the most helpful or the most empowered kind of way. Often for a lot of people, this shows up as like a not enough conversation. Like, I'm not enough inherently as a person to be able to do this, to be able to get what I want, to be worthy of this, whatever it might be. So I definitely agree with you, in terms of entrepreneurial success, like creating more of what you want from a business perspective. It's really looking at how are you identifying and then addressing these underlying self-narratives so that it's not the not enough story that's running the show. You're replacing it with something that's much more empowered. You're replacing it with something that's much more loving, much more compassionate. In addition to on that mindset piece also, and I love that you shared this, thinking about that strengths and weaknesses element. For me, I think I got caught up for a long time feeling like there was a particular way that I was supposed to be going about doing things. Like, so there was a certain way that I was supposed to be selling. There was a certain way that I was supposed to be marketing. There's a certain way, that I was supposed to be delivering whatever I was delivering to my clients. But coming to recognize over time, those approaches were asking me to play with skills that were weaknesses of mine. They were not strengths of mine. So could I do it? Yeah. Did I do it? Often, but it wasn't necessarily the most efficient or effective use of my time and energy. So I love on that mindset piece that you mentioned, like really getting clear on what are your strengths and how can you build more so that you are playing in that arena more, you're playing to your strengths more, and you're not trying to compensate for weaknesses. I love that mindset piece. And I definitely agree with you on the experiential too. And looking at like, it's one thing to theoretically be good at something or to feel like you're good at a particular skill, but it's a totally different thing to actually have lived experience. There's an increased sense of confidence that I don't think that you can buy or think your way into, that has to come from taking action and actually experiencing it.
Love it. Love it. Thank you for sharing your experience as well. How you pivoted from doing things that felt hard for you to playing to your strengths. And that's what in the coaching world, we call it doing things with ease. And you find that alignment of your passion, strengths in the work, things become much more easier. Like it is for Hayden right now, the joy that comes out of doing such things.
Definitely. Yeah, I love that. It's such an important topic and such an important conversation. I think especially in the, business ownership, entrepreneurial landscape, because at least from my perspective, there is a lot of messaging. There's a lot of stories. There's a lot of this sort of like societal belief around how difficult things need to be. Like there's this conversation around hustle. There's this conversation around effort. There's this conversation around doing hard things. And I definitely agree with that. And I think sometimes it can get taken to the extreme. And often it leaves us in this situation where we're more focused on how hard something feels versus how effective it is. And like, I've come to recognize that the things that feel easier to me are actually the things that are more effective. But if I didn't let myself think or consider, how could I make this easy? I never would have found it.
Extreme, well said, which brings me to the next thought that, when it feels too difficult, if someone asks me to, I don't know, maybe sing, that will be the most difficult and challenging task to do. I can never take actions towards becoming the greatest singer, right? It's not in alignment. So start with things that feel easier to you. And if you can put in more intense efforts, by no means we are saying you don't have to work hard. You do. If you want to create substantial results and financial success for yourself, you do have to work hard. But start with things that you feel easier for you, and then put your complete 100% focused efforts into that is, I guess, what the message we are trying to land.
I love that. Yeah. I'd be curious for you. I love the word that you used, alignment, and also just sort of this larger conversation around ease. Like, I'd be curious, how do you go about deciding or assessing whether or not an opportunity or an action is in alignment for you?
Yeah, great question. I think it's a lot of self-reflection, right? It's a lot of self-reflection, and also the coaching I got from other coaches as well helps me move in that direction. But if I reflect on the things that gave me the most joy, the most fun, and it can happen in the area of engineering that I was working on, right? Within the projects, when I was a software engineer, a full-time software engineer, and the projects that I felt more joyful is when I can see the tangible impact of the software I created on my stakeholders' lives. How did it impact? How did it change? I would even go to the store to understand how the store managers are using the software. So that's when I felt passionate about it. Writing software, yeah, cool. It's nice, but that is not my most favorite part. So by reflecting on things that you find joyful within your own stream of work is one of the ways you can find alignment. So that's my response. Would love to hear from you, Hayden. How did you find things?
Totally. Well, I love that answer. I love that, like, the first two words that you used were joy and fun. That's so cool. And yeah, I think it's interesting. It's part of the reason I think why I'm so excited and so passionate about having these kinds of conversations and putting, like, talking about these things and sharing this content and repeating the message over and over, because I definitely found myself in this space where I really discounted how I felt about what I was doing. It was a very sort of like intellectual, what am I supposed to be doing? What's the right thing to do kind of conversation. And there's value in that. There's absolutely value in that. But I think it's also a huge missed opportunity when we're not checking in and when we're not really giving credit to or paying attention to what do we feel the most excited about? What do we feel the most joy doing? What do we have the most fun doing? Because I think we've been led to believe that, like, fun somehow doesn't equal impact, or like fun somehow doesn't equal results or effort or excellence or like whatever it is. And I think it's a bunch of baloney. I don't agree with that. I think when you can bring an element of joy and fun into what you're doing, it actually makes everything easier. Because to me, what you're doing when you're bringing fun and when you're focusing on the things that are fun, you're turning it into a game. And I find that when I'm playing a game, a couple things happen. One is I get a little bit competitive, either with others or with myself. So I am essentially then being called forward into bringing, like, the best of my effort. I also then am not seeing it as such a serious endeavor. And I bring a little bit more lightness to the process. And I think that's really important, because it also means that when I'm making mistakes or when things don't go correctly, I'm not making it mean something about me. I'm just seeing it as, oh, this is a circumstance. That's interesting. Why'd that happen? Oh, like, let me look at it and study it. And then next time, I can do better. So I think bringing that element of joy, bringing that element of fun leads to a lot more effectiveness, leads to a lot more productivity, leads to, much better results. And the way to access it is through feeling. It's not through thought. It's not through intellect. It's not through what sounds right. It's literally through how does your body feel when you think about doing something?
Love it.
When you're thinking about different options. And so for me, that's been a lot of what's sort of been leading my decision-making recently, is not what should I be doing? What's the right decision from here? But, like, what feels good?
I think I love it. I think that's a great way to tap into finding what you are most aligned with, is the feeling. And many times, especially coming from the tech background, that was the hardest thing for me, is to tap into the feeling. I remember the first time I was asked this question, a coach asked me in front of a big group of people, how do you feel? I said, I felt, I didn't know how to describe it, but I think ultimately I said I felt heavy. And he asked me, where do you feel the heaviness? And I said, it's in my head. No, I couldn't answer those questions because I didn't know what I was feeling. I didn't know where I was feeling. So I think, being able to having access to that part of feeling, and, it's a strange word to use, especially in corporations. People are like, what's the return on investment? What is the strategy? But no one talks about, how do you feel about it? Where do you feel? Those are some of the strangest questions, but there is so much value in it. That is our blind spots. That is what I discovered. right? And if you can tap into that, that's one of the ways you can identify what might not be a great idea and what might be a great idea.
That's huge. I so appreciate you sharing that, and I absolutely agree. There's this sort of uh, avoidance of, or not super into this idea of feelings. But I think, again, I think that's a missed opportunity, because I think that our bodies, like, feeling is the language of the body, and I think that our bodies have so much wisdom and are much more intimately and intricately connected than we recognize. The other thing too about just using our brain that I've come to recognize is the brain is where all the conditioning lives. It's where all the bias lives. It's where all the fear lives. And so it can be, absolutely, it's a really helpful tool. But I think if we want to be in a conversation around how do we make the best possible decision, it's a mistake not to be in a holistic conversation where we're looking at all of the data that's available to us, including, that of feeling. And, from a sort of like solopreneur, small business owner, I think it's especially relevant because so much of really, the results that you create, the quality of the results that you create are directly related to the quality of your decisions. And the quality of your decisions, I think, is directly related to how connected are you to yourself. And I would imagine that for a lot of people, there's a disconnect from feelings. There's a disconnect from emotions. And I think in many ways too, right, then there's sort of a disconnect from heart. There's a disconnect from spirit. There's a disconnect from those elements. And if the game is, as a solopreneur, as a small business owner, to create something that's sustainable, that you enjoy doing for a long period of time, where you're not going to burn yourself out, and you're going to create something that feels really enjoyable and that you like doing, I think it's kind of impossible to do just only making decisions through the head.
Absolutely. Love it.
Yeah, man. Well, I'd be curious for you, like, in thinking about where you're at now in your business and looking into the future, like, any recent sort of like breakthroughs or realizations around what feels aligned for you moving forward?
Yeah, for sure. 6 years ago when I started, I was focused mainly on coaching individuals one-on-one. That felt great at that time. I was going through a coach training program. I loved the content of it, and I want to be able to help more people through the content I was learning, I was coaching. And the challenges kept increasing as I got opportunities to coach senior leaders and so on. But right now I'm at the point where, how can I scale this thing? Yeah, coaching is wonderful. I totally love it. But at the same time, it's not a very scalable thing because it's only a one-on-one, right? One-on-one setting that I'm doing. So now the biggest shift I'm making is pivoting into speaking a lot more. And I've been speaking on a couple of different topics. And what I believe it is helping me do is creating a similar level of impact, but with a wider range of audience. So I've been 100% focused and tunnel focused on, developing my speaking business most recently, and that is one of the biggest changes I've made.
Makes total sense. Yeah, I think it's the interesting and really cool thing, in being self-employed is sort of like circling back to what we were saying at the beginning. You ultimately then have the power and the agency to be able to decide, what do you want to spend your time doing and what most speaks to you, and what are you going to prioritize? What are you going to sell? What are you going to build? And I think especially what I found to be really enjoyable working in this space is there's so much overlap between coaching and training and facilitation
Absolutely.
and speaking. Like, it's almost like a spectrum sort of, in a way, versus like, separate, kind of pieces. And I'm finding a lot of joy and a lot of value in creating almost like a portfolio of things that I'm working on, which allow me to flex into different sort of positions and circumstances and environments. It allows me to use different skills at different times, and it just keeps it interesting in that sense.
You're absolutely right. You mentioned about speaking, training, and coaching all fall under very similar umbrella, right? So if someone is listening to this, you might be doing a lot of different things, but what is the umbrella it falls under? At the end of the day, we want to make, at least people in my profession wants to make an impact to other people's life, whether that is through speaking, coaching, or training. And that's where I see a commonality. Sometimes it might be too overwhelming with a lot of different options we have in how we want to move our career forward. But if we can see the North Star and see the commonality and the common threads, that makes it much easier to focus on a forward direction.
Definitely. Yeah, I love that. It's so much of the game, I think, creating clarity on what's the larger vision that you have for yourself. What's the overarching vision? Because to me, that is the most clarifying, most motivating thing that you can do and connect to. Everything makes sense when you're connected to purpose. Everything makes sense when you're connected to your North Star.
Exactly.
Well, Aditya, for the folks who haven't interacted with you yet, who haven't connected with you yet, where can people find you? How can they work with you?
LinkedIn is the best platform to connect with me. And if you want to learn a little more about me, you can also go to my website, whoweare.io.
Awesome. And all of that is in the description of this event. If you enjoyed this show and you want to go deeper with mindset, truly becoming the creator of your own life, I encourage you to subscribe to my LinkedIn newsletter called Unscript Your Life. Every week, I share tips, tricks, strategy stories to help you break out of the scripts, keeping you stuck, and get more of what you want. You can find the link to subscribe to that on my profile, also in the comment section of this live stream. But Aditya, any final thoughts, comments, words of wisdom for the folks out there listening?
No, I can't believe it's already half an hour since we started this LinkedIn Live. This is exactly what we are calling by, we were referring by doing things with ease. Marketing and being on video doesn't have to be the most challenging thing in the world, right? All you have to find is being with the right person on the call, just being able to flow, and it feels effortless, right? So that's a great way to wrap this session.
1000%. I appreciate that. And Aditya, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for your insight, for your wisdom. Thank you, everyone who has been watching today, and for the folks who are watching the recording. Hope you have an amazing rest of your week, and I will see you next Monday, same time, same place. Bye, everybody.